Steve Bull, born Stephen George Bull, hailed from Tipton, Staffordshire, not too far from Molineux, roughly 6 miles in fact. Steve never played for an academy, nor did he play for a youth team at any professional club. Instead, he played for his school teams and finished secondary education just like 90% of young boys did. Soon after finishing school, he joined his local non-league team, Tipton Town, where he juggled playing local Saturday league games with working in multiple factory jobs just to support himself. Bull spent 4 very successful years at Tipton under the manager Sid Day, who just so happened to be a West Bromwich Albion scout. When he scored 17 goals in 20 games, Day recommended Bull to the higher-ups at West Brom for them to have a look. They were undoubtedly impressed with the young striker, so much so that they swiftly offered the 19-year-old a professional contract. Having played just 4 games for West Brom, still managing to score twice, it became very obvious that he'd have limited time on the pitch. In an attempt to seek more game time, West Brom, who were in the 2nd division at the time, offered to sell him and Andy Thompson to 4th division Wolves. I mean, if you're West Brom, you think nothing of it. These 2 fringe players aren't gonna transform your rivals, are they? Anyways, within 10 days of Bull and Thompson joining the club, Wolverhampton Wanderers entered literal hell. As the first round of the FA Cup was approaching, Wolves were going on the road to face non-league Chorley. Chorley, who were in the 6th tier at the time, had to play the tie at Bolton's Burnden Park, as their stadium was not suitable enough to host a tie of this magnitude. Andy Much gave Wolves the lead in a tie, but in typical Wanderer fashion, they couldn't even hold on for more than a minute, forcing a replay at Molineux 3 days later. In front of a barren but toxic crowd, Wolves simply could not afford to lose this game. A diving header by Matt Foreman gave Wolves the advantage once again in this tie, but neither the Wolves players, fans, or Graham Turner could believe what was about to unfold 10 minutes later. Let's say you're the linesman in this game. It's a shockingly low attendance here at Molineux. For the Wolves fans that are here, they've mostly vacated the lower parts of the stands as it's chucking it down with rain. There are Wolves ball boys plastered around the sides of the pitch wearing bright yellow tracksuits. Wolves players are in gold shirts and Chorley players are in black and white. Other than the rain, there is no other reason whatsoever for a lino to not notice a clear and obvious offside, right? However, as the ball is played through the Wolves' defence, Chorley's Paul Moss is in a position that's miles offside. Unfortunately for our protagonists here, the linesman does what we thought could not be feasibly possible. He confuses the ball boy for a Wolves player. Back to Burnden Park for part 3, and Wolves are missing a number of key men. At this point, I just give up, which I think is what Wolves did, to be honest. Our new arrivals Steve Bull and Andy Thompson watched on from the stands, seeing their new team get bounced out of the FA Cup. With his first goal for the club coming within just 2 weeks of joining, Bull completed his first season with a remarkable 15 league goals, the lowest total he'd have for another 7 years. When Wolves lost the first ever playoff finals to Aldershot 3-0, typical, it meant that Steve Bull was going to get a full schedule of dunking on every Division 4 team in his path. His first game of the 87-88 season was, how do I say, eventful. Wolves are without a shadow of a doubt the biggest club in the 4th division. Their opening day opponents are newly promoted Scarborough, playing in their first ever Football League match. The contrast in the state of both Scarborough and Wolves at this time couldn't be any more drastic. Wolves fans were still travelling in their huge numbers despite being at an all-time low in the club's history, and they brought a strong contingent up north to the seaside town of Scarborough and the athletic ground. One of these fans was a man named Andrew Charlesworth. Now it's fair to say that Andrew had had a few to drink before heading to the ground, and he, along with several other Wolves fans, managed to find themselves on the top of one of the roofs of the stands. Now this ground was made back in the early 1900s, and I don't think Scarborough have done much work on that roof there. Hey Andrew, I don't think you should jump on that. Oh man. Andrew fell almost 30 feet down to the terraces and suffered many injuries. Injuries that would take him years to recover from and would affect him for the rest of his life. Despite Steve Bull scoring in this game, his first of the season, Wolves fans got into it with the Scarborough fans, causing pitch invasions, fences being torn down, walls falling down, and a ban for away fans in this fixture in the next few years. Well, this would only be a problem if there was any more league games between Wolves and Scarborough after this season. Well, anyways. Bull finished his first full season with 34 league goals and 52 in all competitions, becoming the first player in nearly 30 years to score more than 50 in a single season in English football. The very next year he'd repeat that feat, becoming the first player to do so in back-to-back seasons for nearly 70 years. These two groundbreaking seasons helped lead Wolves to the Division 4 and 3 titles in 1988 and 89 respectively, along with the Football League trophy with a 2-0 win over Burnley in 88. One of Steve Bull's defining moments in his careers came in 1989, where against Scotland, he joined a select group of players to be capped by England while being in the 3rd tier. The first player to do it since Peter Taylor in 1976, and the last to do it to this day. He was fortunate enough to come on as a substitute in the 32nd minute, and boy did he take his chance, as with just 10 minutes left of normal time, Bull brushed aside the Scottish defender and fired home England's second of the game and his first senior international goal. As Wolves faced tougher opponents in the 2nd division, Bull's goals tally halved to just 24 goals. Remember that New Year's Day trip to Newcastle? Well, Wolves defeated the Magpies 4-1 with a slightly hungover Steve Bull, grabbing all 4 goals. Just to show how vital he is to the squad, despite a reduction in his goal tally, he was still their top goal scorer for a 4th of 8 consecutive seasons. Bull even added 3 more England goals in friendly matches in 1990, 2 against Czechoslovakia at Wembley and a late equaliser against Tunisia. Steve Bull wasn't just a goal scorer, he was Wolves. A man who wore his heart on the sleeve and never gave less than 100%. In less than 6 years at the club, Steve Bull broke Wolves' goal-scoring record set by John Richards when he scored his 195th goal. In all this time, Steve had many chances to leave and join a club in the Premier League or in Europe. After Italia 90, he had slight interest from Genoa and an even stronger push from Torino. Ron Atkinson had his eyes on bringing Bull to Coventry, and he also turned down Newcastle United just as they were pushing for promotion. Often describing Molineux as his spiritual home, Bull remained ever so loyal to Wolves, making a total of 561 appearances for the club and scoring an incredible 306 goals over a 13-year-long stay. Steve Bull helped the club regain its status in the 2nd tier and, in his own right, cemented his own legendary status. Such loyalty that has sadly been lost in modern football. During the outbreak of the Second World War, a young man is so overwhelmed by the news that he cycles all the way to Oxford and volunteers to fight. He eventually joins the Royal Air Force, where he'd receive flight training in Yorkshire, the US and Canada. Still, at the young age of 18, he'd become a pilot officer for the 671 Squadron, where he'd be posted in India for the war, bringing supplies to troops in both India and Burma. When he was eventually demobilized as a flight lieutenant a year after the war ended, he'd still keep a keen interest in all things planes, all things RAF, and all things shipping. Our mystery man would move to the sunny climate of the Bahamas to work in his father's business, soon becoming the vice president of the company and also helping to transform the area of Freeport, Grand Bahama. Almost 30 years later, with his newfound wealth, he became one of the many potential buyers in a bidding war for a stricken football club. He was initially offered shares in 1982 but refused. He also placed a bid for the club when Doug Ellis threw them into receivership. He also gave some support to Weldon and his bid, but would ultimately lose out to the Barties and Dugan. And we all know how that ended. 4 years later, he'd be knighted by Queen Elizabeth for his wonderful philanthropy and charitable endeavours. 4 years after that, he'd finally complete his childhood dream. For the price of £2.1 million, Sir Jack Hayward, born in Wolverhampton and lifelong Wolves supporter, was now the sole owner of Wolverhampton Wanderers, and he had one more dream to complete.